Hello and welcome to Nikolay's genetics lessons, and the question of the day is the sexual life history of the unicellular Chlamydomonas is, and you have to choose one of these answers. What is Chlamydomonas? Take a look at this picture. So Chlamydomonas you see here in the left top corner because it is most primitive green alga. All other representatives here also belong to the green alga, but as you see, all these lineages are much more developed in comparison to Chlamydomonas, which is considered to be most primitive. And what is interesting, it is unicellular and has two flagella, so it have a behavior like of the animal because it can freely move, and it also has eye spot. It has two different ways of propagation, and one would be asexual. Chlamydomonas is haploid organism. Adult organism is haploid. So just like bacteria, it can propagate by binary fusion, and one cell, one mother cell, would produce two daughter cells, and those daughter cells also would produce two daughter cells and would be mother cell in this case. So in just one generation we start with one, we have two, then we have four, then we have 8, and so on, just like in bacteria. So when this alga propagates by mitosis, we say that all the progeny are going to be genetically identical because no recombinations happen here, and all the progeny would be considered clones. And with each cycle, number of the progeny would grow exponentially. In this scenario, division of cells would be rapid. This is most primitive way of propagation, which is mitosis. But if you take a look at the answers, you're not going to find a sexual reproduction here because there is sexual reproduction also present in Chlamydomonas. If there is no environmental pressure, Chlamydomonas would propagate by asexual mode, but under environmental pressure, Chlamydomonas would choose sexual mode of reproduction when genetic variation would be created. As you already know, adult form of this alga is haploid, and when it divides, it can produce gametes, which also looks identical to this haploid form, but gametes can fuse and form zygote, and zygote is always diploid. So we start with haploid adult form, and it's going to produce gametes by mitosis, not by meiosis, but by mitosis because they are already haploid. So zygote may exist for a long time to survive in harsh environment, but when environment would favor reproduction, so zygote through the process of meiosis would make haploid adult entities, which would be genetically diverse because through the process of meiosis, genetic diversity would increase through the process of gene recombination. Now let's take a look at more precise picture of the same process. As you see, we start again with haploid adults, which can propagate by mitosis. This is going to be a sexual mode of reproduction, but in the unfavorable environmental conditions may reproduce through the sexual mode. So will produce gametes. And as you see, gametes look the same as adult form, and through the process of mitosis because they are haploid. So they would produce haploid gametes. These haploid gametes would fuse, and these gametes of course have to be from the different parents, which would be genetically different because they would make these gametes through the process of mitosis, which would produce genetically identical gametes to their parents. So these two gametes, one we call plus, another minus, would fuse and would form diploid zygote. Zygote is going to be dormant because it's going to wait for the right conditions, and when such right conditions would come through the process of meiosis, which means genetic recombination, so zygote is diploid, would produce genetically different spores, which represent these haploid adult entities. And then cycle continues. If conditions are favorable, Chlamydomona would propagate by asexual mode. If not, again by sexual mode. And this sexual mode of reproduction we call zygotic meiosis, which is dominated by haploid adults. So as you see, variant C is going to be our answer. The sexual life history of the unicellular Chlamydomonas is zygotic meiosis. And this is all for today. Subscribe and see you in the next video. Goodbye.